Somewhere in America right now, a kid is sitting on the edge of a pool wrapped in a towel, watching the water, waiting 30 minutes because they ate a sandwich. That kid is in no danger whatsoever, but somewhere at that same pool, an adult is in real trouble, and nobody has noticed. Not because people aren't paying attention, because drowning doesn't look like anything you would notice. So there are two things going on here. There is the thing we have been protecting children from for 100 years, which turns out to be nothing at all. And there is the thing that is actually pulling people under, which almost nobody warns you about, even though it shows up in most adult drownings. I'll get to it. First, we have to take the rule apart, because it is a very good story, and it is completely wrong. Nobody knows exactly who said it first, but it shows up in early 20th century scouting and swimming manuals, right around the time public pools were spreading across America. And it fit with what people believed about the body back then, which was a great deal less than we believe now. Then it did what good-sounding advice does. It got repeated, not argued for, not tested, just handed down, which is how most of what you believe about your own body got to you in the first place. Parent to child, lifeguard to swimmer for a century, without anybody stopping to check whether it was true. That is the thing about advice that costs you almost nothing. Half an hour on a deck chair is cheap. Nobody asks a cheap rule for evidence. The explanation always goes the same way. You eat. Blood rushes to your stomach to handle digestion. Your arms and legs are left short. They cramp. You cannot swim. You go under. And here is the uncomfortable part. The first half of that is genuinely true. After a meal, blood flow to your digestive tract really does climb. And it is not a subtle change. The vessels feeding your gut widen. The flow through them rises substantially, and it stays raised for a while. Your gut needs oxygen, and it needs to move nutrients somewhere useful, so your body sends more blood there, and it keeps sending it for a couple of hours. That is real physiology. It is not folklore, which is exactly why this one survived so long. It is built on a true fact. It simply draws the wrong conclusion from it. The wrong assumption is that your body holds a fixed amount of blood and has to decide who gets it. It does not work like that. Your heart is not a fixed pump. The moment you start moving, output climbs, and it climbs steeply. A healthy adult swimming hard pushes several times the blood per minute that they push sitting still. Your body is not dividing one small pie between your stomach and your legs. It is baking a bigger pie. So, what does actually happen when you swim on a full stomach? You might feel heavy. You might get a side stitch, which is uncomfortable and harmless and not fully understood even now. If you ate an enormous meal, you might feel slightly sick, and it is not the most pleasant swim of your life. That is the entire list. Discomfort, not paralysis, not sinking, not death. And there is a group of people who demonstrate this every single weekend. Competitive open water and marathon swimmers eat during races. They take on gels and drinks in the water, mid-effort, and keep going for hours afterwards. Some of those races run well past 10 hours, and eating during them is not a risk somebody decided to accept. It is the only way anybody finishes. If a full stomach shut down your limbs, that sport could not exist. Now here is the number that ends the argument. Americans spend hundreds of millions of days in pools, lakes, and oceans every year, and a very large share of those people ate something in the previous half hour, because that is what humans do at a pool. If a full stomach were even slightly dangerous, it would show up in the data. It would be a recognized category with a name. Lifeguard training would cover it. There would be a line about it on the sign at the gate. It is not. There is no documented drowning death attributed to swimming after eating. The category is empty, but drowning itself is not rare, and this is the point where it stops being a fun myth-busting video. Thousands of people drown in the United States every year. For children between 1 and 4 years old, it is the leading cause of death. This is a real thing that really kills people. We just spent 100 years pointing at the wrong end of it. So what is at the other end? Alcohol. United States health agencies estimate it is involved in up to 70% of water recreation deaths among teenagers and adults, not a contributing factor in a handful of tragedies. The single most common thread running through all of them. And it is not simply clumsiness. It goes after 4 separate things you need in water at exactly the same time. It slows your judgment, so the swim across the lake looks shorter than it is. It degrades coordination and reaction time. It widens your blood vessels, so you lose heat faster into cold water. And it blunts the reflexes that keep you breathing when your head goes under. The gasp, the breath hold, the panic that would otherwise save you. Nobody stands at the edge of a pool with a beer and waits half an hour. There is a second half to this, and it is the part I would want you to keep if you keep nothing else. Drowning is quiet. Almost everybody pictures splashing and shouting, arms thrashing above the surface, a shout for help, somebody on the side of the pool turning around at the noise. is. That is television. It is not what happens. A drowning person cannot call for help because the body puts breathing ahead of speech, and their mouth is only clearing the surface for a fraction of a second at a time. Their arms press down on the water instinctively, trying to lever their head up, which means they cannot wave either. They stay upright. They do not kick, and the whole thing lasts somewhere between 20 and 60 seconds before they slip under. A lifeguard researcher called Frank Pia filmed real drownings and named this the instinctive drowning response. It is nearly silent, and from 10 feet away it is almost invisible. So picture the scene we started with. A loud pool, music, people talking over each other, and somebody going under in the middle of all of it without making a sound, which means the half-hour rule was not completely useless. It was doing something for 100 years. It was just lying about its job. It pulled children out of the water and back onto the deck at intervals, in front of adults, at precisely the moments when those adults were most distracted, eating, drinking, talking to each other. It was a supervision rule wearing a digestion costume. The costume is the problem, because you can drop the costume and keep the part that was actually working. One sober adult whose only job is watching the water and handing that job off out loud when they swap. Life jackets rather than inflatable toys, which are floating objects and not safety equipment. A fence between the house and the pool. Swimming lessons early. None of that has anything to do with lunch. Your mother was wrong about the food. She was also wrong about the wet hair and the open window. But that one is stranger, because it turns out cold really does do something to you. Just not the thing she thought, and not in the place she thought. That is the next one. You were scared of the wrong thing. See you next time.